Dear students, today we have next lesson from your syllabus to discuss, that is Discovering Tut, the Saga Continues by A.R. Williams. This lesson is about the mummy discovered in 1922, the mummy of an Egypt ruler named Tute. His mummy was first discovered in 1922 and then that was taken up for CT scan in 2005. The writer tells us that when the mummy was taken out from its tomb in 2005, it was windy and cloudy weather. It was 6 p.m. 5th January 2005. Clouds were overcasting the sky and the mummy was taken out from the Valley of the Kings, ancient Egyptian cemetery where all the mummies of Egyptian rulers were kept, and there were many tourists around in the time when this all taking out of the mummy was being carried out. There were many tourists around, and they had descended into 26 feet underground. They were doing so to pay respect to this young ruler. Tute was just a teenager when he died. He was the last heir of a powerful family who ruled Egypt, and after him, this dynasty ended. Some of the visitors were watching the murals on the tomb. Murals are the pictures drawn directly on the walls, and there were a lot of pictures on the walls of the tomb. Some of the visitors were reading guidebooks to know more about the Tute, and some were silently pondering, thinking about the untimely death of Tute, because he died in very young age, and many of the visitors were thinking how he died so young. Next, the writer tells us that the mummy was in bad condition because of what Carter did. Who is Carter? Carter was the first person who discovered the tomb. He searched for 1 year, and uh, after 1 year's futile search, means wasteful search, he found the tomb. However, it was in bad condition, but still it was complete. A lot of things were there with the mummy, to which further added to the belief in rebirth. The people in ancient Greek believed that there is birth after death. So they would place a lot of things of daily use along with the dead body or the mummy, and this all substantiate the belief in rebirth. There were many things like board games, bronze razor, linen undergarments, cases of food and wine, etc. After he discovered first, for months, Carter recorded all these things placed around the tomb. Then he finally decided to investigate further in the three nested coffins. The mummy was actually placed in nested coffins. There were one coffin inside the one coffin was the second, and then in the third coffin was the actual mummy placed. So he further studied those nested coffins and found a lot of things like shroud adorned with garlands of willow, lotus petal, olive leaves, so on and so on. After these three nested coffins, he reached the mummy and he was shocked to find that the resins. Resin is the sticky, flammable substance exuded by pine tree. And he found that the resin was hardened. There was resins placed under the mummy and he found that had hardened, and he then tried to loosen that resins by experimenting the mummy in sun heat, and he sun heated up to 149 degree Fahrenheit but got no positive results. Then he decided that it should be chiseled away from the beneath. Chiseled away means using hammer and chisels to loosen the resin. It was the last option because there was a lot of risk involved to harm the mummy, and so happened when the carter's men were separating Tute from all the adornments. They harmed every major part of the mummy, and finally, when they were done with separating mummy from resins, they reassembled on a layer of sand in a wooden box, and they even further worked to conceal the damage caused by the chiseling. After that, in 1968, around 40 years after Carter first discovered the tooth, an anatomy professor x-rayed the mummy and found his breastbone and front ribs missing. He was shocked to find that some of the bones and ribs were missing. Then the writer tells us that today's archaeology focuses less on treasure and more on fascinating details of life. And so, in 2005, when X ray technique progressed and computer tomography CT scan came in way, then once again a CT scan was planned for Tute's mummy. However, when they were planning the CT scan, there were two questions underway: whether the CT scan will reveal the reason of Tute's death, and second question, what was the Tute's age at the time of his death. There was these two questions, major questions, before this CT scan was being planned. Before the writer tells us how the CT scan took place, the writer takes up to the history of the descendants and descendants of Tute. The writer tells us that Amenhotep III, probably he was Tute's father or he might be grandfather, was a powerful ruler who ruled for 4 decades. And how he died and what were the particulars about his deaths were all unclear. And then after Amenhotep III, Amenhotep IV took to the reign. He was the strangest ruler. He promoted worship of Aten. Aten is the sun disk, or we can say the sun worshipping. And even he changed his name to Akhenaten. This means the servant of the Aten, sun. He posed himself as a worshipper and a servant of sun. He even did one more strange thing by shifting the capital from Thebes to Akhetaten. And these days, this place is known as Amana. Further, he did one more strange thing by attacking Amun. Amun is a major god in Egypt, and he attacked Amun's images, he attacked Amun's temples, closed down the temples, and this way he disturbed the religious beliefs in Egypt. So these were the strange things done by Amenhotep IV. And then Smenkhkare appeared and exited without any trace. For some times he took to the rule, and then after this Tutankhamun, Tut, the youngest of all, took to the rule. He changed his name to Tutankhamun, which means living image of Amun. Remember, Amenhotep IV stopped the worship of Amun, even uh, closed the temples and smashed his images. But this Tut, the Tutankhamun, later on known as Tutankhamun, restored the old religious beliefs. He reigned for 9 years and then died unexpectedly. And out of the 600 mummies of Egyptian rulers, his was the first which was being CT scanned. And the writer next tells us how does a CT scan works. He tells us that a CT scan machines takes around 1700 digital x-rays in cross sections and to create a 3D image. Next is the major part of the lesson, how the CT scan of Tute take place. Workmen carried Tute from the tomb and rose on a hydraulic lift into the trailer that held the scanner. While the Tute was being CT scanned in the machine, the cooler fan of the scanner stopped working, and after 20 minutes, while the scan was being carried out, two men rushed out for plastic fans because the scanner stopped working, and they replaced it and took those plastic fan for work. And unfortunately, scanner started working and the CT scan finished well. And it was after around 3 hours that Tute was taken back to the coffins. Now the writer tells us about what had been the findings of the CT scan. Jahi Hawass, who actually carried out this CT scan, came up to reveal that astonishing images on computer screen appeared after the CT scan. Those X-ray images, pixels of those X-ray images started taking shape of head, and then neck vertebrae started appearing, then hands, then rib cage, and then whole body started appearing. Jahi Awaz, who carried out this CT scan, discloses that he could not sleep the previous night as to being excited for the results of CT scan. And when he was well confirmed that nothing went wrong and things are fine. The next day he took a good sleep, and in the ending part, the writer tells when they were departing from that place, the wind stopped, winter air was cool like death, and before they left, they had a final look at the entrance of Tute's tomb and found that Orion, Orion means soul of Osiris, the god of afterlife, was standing by the Tute, and that goddess of afterlife was watching the boy king. This was the mural, the final picture they saw over the wall of the tomb of the Tute king. So, this was the summary or the explanation of this lesson, Discovering Tut, the Saga Continues by A.R. Williams. This is a bit strange kind of lesson. I wish you all to listen to the video twice or thrice. After you will watch the explanation twice or thrice and would write a summary by your own, I pretty hope that you will understand this lesson easily. Thank you.